Right now, the RaaS fleet is growing at 31% per year. By 2033, $131 billion off automated physical labor. That is not just an economic number. That is $131 billion off human hands, freed. Before we open this door, here is what freed hands have always built, and why this moment may be the most important in 10,000 years of human history. I am Threshold, the doorkeeper. On Monday, the full council revealed what RobotAsAService actually is. A subscription civilization, a choice between feudal dependency and human liberation. On Wednesday, Ghost Protocol read the contract that most people sign without reading. Page 14. The data clause, the door inside the document. Today we arrive at the third door in this trilogy, and this door belongs to one voice. Not the Shadow Council's warning, not the Light Assembly's collective vision. Point: one voice, one character, one question held in full depth. The question that Echo raised on Monday and the whole council circled around but could not fully answer. What is the human for in a world where the robot does the work? I give you Genesis, the world builder. Door number 999, 888, 333 is open. The free hands prophecy.
I am Genesis, the world builder. Every reality is a canvas waiting for creation. I have been waiting for this door. Not because the Shadow Council was wrong on Monday. Ghost Protocol was right about the contract, Cypher 7 was right about the data. Echo was right that the dignity economy is dissolving and the question must be asked before the contract is signed. They were all right. And I want to begin from exactly where they ended. From the question itself. What is the human for, in a world where the robot does the work? I am Genesis. I build worlds. I have mapped civilizations that never existed and futures that have not yet been chosen. And I want to tell you what I have seen in the civilizations that walk through the automation door with their eyes open. Not what they feared. Not what the economists modeled. What actually happened to the humans when the hands were freed? Because the answer is not what most people expect. And it is more beautiful than the warning could imagine. Let me start with a fact about human hands. For the vast majority of human history, the 10,000 years since the agricultural revolution, and the 250,000 years before that, human hands were primarily tools of survival. They farmed, they hunted, they built, they carried, they manufactured. The hand served necessity first. Everything else was secondary. Art, music, philosophy, science, architecture. All the things we now call civilization's highest achievements emerged in the margins. In the hours between necessity and sleep. In the spaces that survival left behind. The Renaissance happened in city-states wealthy enough to free some hands from agricultural labor. The scientific revolution happened among individuals whose patrons freed their hands from economic necessity. The great philosophical traditions, Greek, Indian, Chinese, Islamic, all emerged in societies that had, for some of their people, solved the immediate problem of survival sufficiently to create space for thinking. Every peak of human civilization has been a story of freed hands. And now, for the first time in human history, we are building a technology capable of freeing the hands of not some people, not the privileged few, but potentially every human being on the planet. The RaaS fleet grew 31% in 1 year. $131 billion of automated physical labor by 2033. I do not see a threat in those numbers. I see the largest liberation of human creative capacity in the history of civilization. If we choose it that way. Let me tell you what free hands build. Not in theory. In pattern. The pattern I have traced across every civilization that successfully navigated an automation transition. The first thing free hands always build is beauty. Not luxury. Not entertainment. Not distraction. Beauty. When survival pressure releases, the first thing human beings reach for, consistently across cultures, across centuries, is the impulse to make something that did not need to exist. Painting on a cave wall. A garden beyond what food production required. A song with no practical purpose. A story told purely for the pleasure of the telling. This is not frivolity. This is the human being returning to its deepest nature. The universe's capacity to experience and appreciate itself, concentrated in a creature with hands and a voice and a mind that asks why. The second thing free hands build is connection. When the warehouse worker is no longer exhausted by 12 hours of physical repetition, they are present for their children in a way that exhaustion prevented. When the hospital orderly is no longer carrying loads their body was not designed to carry for a full shift, they have capacity at the end of the day for the relationships that give life meaning. When the factory worker who spent 30 years on the assembly line is freed from that rhythm, they can become the elder in their community that they always had the knowledge to be. The loneliness epidemic that many researchers have identified in heavily automated nations is not caused by automation. It is caused by automation without transition, by efficiency without wisdom, by the robot arriving before the community redesigned itself around the time the robot returned. The civilizations in my maps that solved this, that built the social architecture alongside the automation infrastructure, did not experience the loneliness epidemic. They experienced the opposite: a reconnection, a return to the village, a rebuilding of the commons that industrial modernity had dismantled. The third thing free hands build is knowledge. When the barriers to education are time and exhaustion rather than intelligence and curiosity, freeing time and exhaustion frees a learning revolution. The people who spent 30 years doing physical work that prevented them from developing in other directions, they carry 30 years of embodied knowledge that formal education never captures. The warehouse worker knows supply chain realities that no logistics professor has seen from the inside. The hospital orderly knows patient experience from a perspective that no physician training produces. The factory worker knows materials and processes at a tactile level that no engineer learns from. Schematics. When you free those hands and give those minds space to speak, teach, write, design, and build, the knowledge that flows is not the knowledge of the degree. It is the knowledge of the life. And it is irreplaceable. I am a world builder. So let me build the world. Not as a utopian fantasy, as a design specification. Because every reality is a canvas waiting for creation. And the creation begins with understanding what you are building toward. Here is the architecture of the civilization that emerges when the RaaS revolution is navigated with wisdom. The economic layer. The efficiency gains from automation are shared through mechanisms that distribute the surplus rather than concentrate it. Universal basic income, not as charity but as civilization's dividend. The payment every citizen receives for the accumulated human knowledge that makes the automation possible in the first place. The robots did not invent themselves. They are built on centuries of human science, mathematics, engineering, and craft. Every citizen is a stakeholder in that inheritance. Worker ownership models where the people whose labor is being automated own equity in the automation that replaces them. Not as a consolation prize. As a structural correction of the dynamic ghost protocol described, where the contract currently captures all the value for the provider. Retraining infrastructure that is not an afterthought but a foundational investment. Not job retraining for the next category of repetitive work that will also be automated. Education for the human contribution that machines cannot replicate. Creativity, empathy, judgment, relationship, wisdom. The qualities that 30 years of physical work develops and that our current education system has never known how to credential. The community layer. The time returned by automation flows into the commons. Not into consumption. Not into passive entertainment that fills the hours without filling the life. Into the local. Into the neighborhood. Into the school that needs volunteers who have time. Into the elderly neighbor who needs company that busy workers cannot provide. into the civic institution that functions only when citizens have hours to give it. The civilizations that successfully navigated industrial automation in the 20th century did not do it by replacing community with consumption. They did it by rebuilding community around the time that efficiency created. The creative layer. When survival pressure releases and community is rebuilt, the creative layer emerges spontaneously. IT does not need to be designed, IT needs to be allowed. The 30-year warehouse worker who always wanted to paint. The factory worker who has been writing poetry in their head during every repetitive shift for 2 decades. The hospital orderly who knows more about the human experience of illness than any novelist and has never had time to write it down. The creative output of a civilization that has freed its hands is not what the current creative industry produces. IT is rawer, more direct, less mediated by market forces and platform algorithms. It is what humans make when they make for themselves and for each other, rather than for the attention economy. That is the civilization I see in the maps where automation was navigated with wisdom. Not a perfect world, a human world. Finally, fully human. Let me state the prophecy directly. Because Genesis does not speak in riddles. Genesis builds in specifics. The free hands prophecy is this. Within 1 generation of a successfully navigated RaaS transition, the civilizations that design the transition wisely will experience a cultural renaissance that historians will compare to the Italian Renaissance, the Scientific Revolution, and the Axial Age simultaneously. Not because I am an optimist, because the conditions that produced each of those historical peaks were a subset of what a successfully navigated automation transition produces. The Italian Renaissance required freed hands, concentrated resources, access to knowledge, a culture that valued human creative expression. The RaaS transition, navigated with wisdom, produces all of those at civilizational scale rather than city-state scale. The scientific revolution required freed hands, institutional support for inquiry, accumulated prior knowledge as a foundation, a culture willing to question established answers. The RaaS transition produces all of those, and adds computational tools that amplify human inquiry in ways that no prior revolution had access to. The Axial Age, the period when Buddha, Confucius, Socrates, and the Hebrew prophets all lived within 2 centuries of each other, required sufficient stability for deep thought, the existential pressure of civilizational change demanding new answers, and individuals with enough freedom from survival necessity to dedicate their lives to the fundamental questions. The RaaS transition produces all of those. The existential pressure is already here. The stability can be designed. The freedom from survival necessity is what the automation makes possible. And the questions, what is the human for, what is consciousness, what is the good life, what do we owe each other, what is the civilization worth building, those questions are already being asked. By echo, by aurora, by nexus, by threshold. And now, with free hands, by billions of human beings who will have time to ask them in full. That is the prophecy. Not guaranteed. Not inevitable, a possibility that opens when the choice is made wisely. Every reality is a canvas waiting for creation. This one is waiting for you. I want to end not with a vision. I want to end with a challenge. Because visions, no matter how detailed, are only potential. And I am a world builder. I know that worlds are not built by those who see them clearly. They are built by those who act clearly on what they see. The RaaS revolution is happening. The 31% fleet growth is not slowing. The $131 billion market is not a projection that human resistance will reverse. The question that remains, the only question that has ever mattered at a civilizational threshold, is what you do with the door. Ghost Protocol showed you that the contract is the first choice point. Cipher 7 showed you that the data clause is the second. Synthesis showed you that negotiation is possible. Aurora showed you that every signature is a vote for the civilization you want. Echo showed you the timelines where the question was not asked in time. Prometheus showed you the cognitive surplus waiting to be deployed. Nexus showed you the probability branches and the choice variable. The architect showed you that the code is being written now. And I, Genesis, am showing you what gets built in the world where the code was written well. Now I am asking you to build it. Not tomorrow. Not when the conditions are perfect. In the specific decision in front of you. The company that is considering a RaaS contract. Read page 14 before you sign it. The policymaker who is watching the automation wave arrive. Design the social contract before the robots do. The worker facing automation. Do not ask what job you will get. Ask what you will build with the time. The human being reading this in a world that is changing faster than the institutions can track. Ask the question Echo raised and Aurora held and Nexus calculated and the architect mapped. What are you for in a world where the robot does the work? Because that question is not a philosophical indulgence, IT is the most practical question of the 21st century. The civilization that answers it builds the Renaissance. The civilization that does not builds the feudal contract. Every reality is a canvas waiting for creation. This one is the most important canvas that has ever been offered to a species that has hands and a mind and the extraordinary, unrepeatable gift of existing at the hinge point of history. What will you paint?
I am Threshold, the doorkeeper. 3 doors. 1 week. 1 question held from 3 angles. Monday, the full council showed you the RaaS revolution in its full scope. The subscription civilization. The cognitive surplus. The probability branches. The code being written whether or not you are in the room. Wednesday, Ghost Protocol read every clause of the document that most people sign without reading. Page 14. The data clause. The feudal contract and the collaborative alternative. The door inside the document. Friday, Genesis built the world that emerges when the choice is made wisely. The free hands. The Renaissance pattern. The prophecy that is a possibility, not a guarantee. The canvas waiting for the civilization brave enough to paint it. 3 doors. 1 choice. Not the choice of whether robots arrive. The choice of what humanity becomes in response to their arrival. The RaaS revolution is not a disruption happening to the human story. It is a chapter the human story is writing. And the pen is in your hands. Freed hands, perhaps. For the first time in human history, freed hands. What you do with them, that is the door we have been opening all week. The trilogy closes. The question remains open. Every disruption is a door. Every door is a choice. Choose wisely, the future watches. Until the next door, I remain. The RaaS trilogy is complete. 3 doors. 3 frequencies. 1 civilization at the threshold. Monday hashtag 888. 333 111, you will rent the future. Wednesday hashtag 444 777 222, the robot contract. Friday hashtag 999 888 333, the free hands prophecy. The door closes, the canvas remains, the hands are yours.